Alright, this is just going to be a quick video on pulling the jet pump unit out of a mid-90s Yamaha Waveraider. The process is going to be the same for mid-90s to early 2000s superjets as well. Anything with the 62T two-cylinder, two-stroke motors, the 701s. And the process is actually fairly similar for the larger Raiders with the 1100s or the Wave Venturers or the XLTs, things like that. The mounting points are more or less the same across both skis from the 90s. Now, the reason you want to pull the entire jet unit out is you might be tempted to leave the duct housing in the hull and just try and pull your wear ring and jet pump off as one piece. Where a lot of people run into problems is when these are sealed together, they're very hard to separate. If you do a lot of saltwater riding, and look, let's be honest, these skis, well, this one in particular is 30 years old, and whilst this pump unit is really clean, the ski's been taken care of, it hasn't really had a lot of use, to be honest. Just looking at it, you can see the condition. There's not a lot of corrosion. But regardless, there's still salt that builds up between the mating surfaces, and that effectively welds the wear ring to the duct. The issues arise when you're working on the entire unit underneath. You'll be tempted to undo your 4 stainless studs. So these obviously feed through into here. It's mounting into the duct itself. Once you remove these, in theory, you should be able to start separating the reduction nozzle then the stator as well should separate, and the actual duct from the wear ring. As I said though, all of these components will effectively be welded together through age, salt and corrosion. And you've only got a very small point of leverage on both sides. It's mirrored on either side. When you start hanging off this, especially if you're working underneath the ski on the back of a trailer, if you put too much force on this, you're going to crack it. Because bearing in mind, this is going to be fused the whole way around, and you're just applying pressure to a very small point of the 2 housings. Inevitably what happens is you might not just snap this ear off, but you might snap an entire section of either the duct, the wear ring, or the stator housing when you go to actually try and separate these 2 parts. That's why I recommend taking the time, and this is a lot easier in the long run, to just remove the mounting bolts from the hull. There's 2 here in the duct. You don't have to touch any of the bolts in the intake scoop or grate. And then you've got 2 bolts on the wear ring, and then you've got 2 bolts on the reduction nozzle. That's the only thing holding this entire unit to the hull of the jet ski. Obviously you need to go through and pull off your steering linkage, trim linkage if you have it, and then you've got to have various the cooling hoses, as well as the rear flag hose as well that shoots out the back of Yamaha skis. When it comes time to actually remove this from the hull, it's still going to be married to the shaft, and the mid shaft that's in the jet ski. There's just a small seal there, and obviously again through time it's going to be quite stiff. It's going to feel like this entire unit is still stuck to the ski, and there will be an element of this gasket that is stuck to the hull, but ultimately it's not really that's got it stuck in the hull, it's this. So the easiest way to remove it, once you've undone all of your mounting bolts, is to remove the grate. In my case, my grate was destroyed by the previous owner, but there's obviously two bolts up the front, and in the case of a Waveraider, there's an actual scoop that feeds up into the jet pump itself. Pull the grate off, bearing in mind this is still connected to the ski, and then grab a rubber mallet or a dead blow hammer, something of that nature, and begin lightly tapping on this 90-degree face of the duct. You'll find that that will slowly start to release this shaft from the mid shaft, and then the entire unit just pulls out from the rear of the ski. Once you've got the entire assembly out, you can begin the process of separating the wear ring from the duct. The easiest way is to take your time, apply some heat around the outside of the seal of the two mating surfaces, and very slowly and delicately leverage between the two separating points. Don't put a lot of pressure on it. You can actually watch either ear flex as you're doing it. If you snap these, it's going to be very, very problematic. The other thing you want to do whilst you're adding heat is continue to add penetrant the whole way around, and you slowly but surely this gap will start to open up. This is obviously how it looks when it's sealed, and if you can imagine, you're slowly working the two pieces apart, very, very slowly. As this opens up with heat, you're adding more penetrant. My best bit of advice is to take your time, don't rush this. Inevitably, if you rush it, if you put too much force on either of these 2 points, you're going to break something, which means you're going to have to wait for replacement parts. And in the case of older skis, it starts to become a bit of a negative return. I mean, the skis themselves, they're quite cheap to acquire, and in my case, it's a very, very clean original ski. But working on them and replacing parts, you start to sort of spend more money on the replacement parts than the actual ski cost to buy. So take your time, slowly separate it, and save yourself a bit of money and do it properly.